I've seen photos and videos and movies of UFOs all my life.
Special effects legend Doug Trumbull and his UFO interests have been making some news this week. Trumbull is known for his groundbreaking work in 2001: A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters, and Blade Runner. All of these movies are some of my personal absolute favorites. Trumbull is currently working on a UFO project, and the buzz this week is the news that he is releasing a fictional 10-minute movie basically on this UFO project. The movie and the project are called UFOTOG, a combination of UFO and photography. Trumbull currently owns an ex-military Hummer that is kitted out with some high-tech video equipment for the express purpose of taping a UFO. The movie is about a man who used this sort of equipment to film a UFO. For more details on this project, something the movie bloggers have also been looking for, we interviewed Mark D'Antonio. Mark is a photo analyst for the Mutual UFO Network. He also owns the company FX Models, which works with the entertainment industry as well as with the military and others to build detailed technical models. D'Antonio also works closely with Trumbull on his UFO movies and UFO projects. Trumbull's new UFO short is also a bit of an experiment. It was shot in 3D, but not your normal 3D. D'Antonio explains more about this technology in this interview. I am here with my good buddy, Mark D'Antonio, and he works for FX Models, where he does lots of cool stuff, including what we're going to talk to you about today, because you're working with legendary special effects guy, Doug Trumbull, on some really super cool projects. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you for having me, Alejandro. And yes, it's true. You know, Doug is an amazing man. I got to work with Doug several years ago on a Burger King commercial, and he said he thought there might be some work for me up there, and I contacted him because of UFOs.
Oh, really?
He's a UFO hunter, and I had heard about that, and so I actually contacted him, and I got an email back. And I was surprised because here I got an email from a man whose movies shaped my early childhood.
Right.
You know,
well,
let's
let's mention those for people. 2001 and Blade Runner are a couple which are just groundbreaking for special effects.
And there's many more. I mean, there was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You know, people grew up, you know, seeing special effects created by Doug in Close Encounters. When the mothership called Sky Harbor, oddly enough, you know, comes out of the clouds, that entire effect was done in a tank, and Doug created that effect using various temperatures of liquid in the tank, salt water and fresh water, and then milk coming out of tiny little spigots that were placed strategically in there. And he actually used a remote control manipulator arm to actually dynamically in real time place that milk out of the spigots. As these little tiny nozzles would be trailed through the water tank. Meanwhile, of course, the cinema camera was filming the entire thing.
Wow.
And yeah, really neat effects.
Wow, pretty cool. So Doug, like you said, he's really into UFOs, and you guys are working on this new project called UFOTOG, UFOTOG, and it's made some news because it's got like a couple different phases, I guess. There's the actual phase where you're using technologies to go look at UFOs, but then there's also some fictional movies that are coming out about this. So maybe at first explain the photographic, the project, the heart of the project.
Sure. Many years ago, you know, Doug actually created UFOTOG because he, like a lot of people in the UFO arena, were just getting tired of seeing just a single bad photo of a UFO event, and then people saying, well, that's it. UFOs exist because this one photo proves it. When in fact, as a photo analyst, a man of science, I can say that's not enough. We have to have more proof. We need corroborating evidence. Everybody does. That's important, and we can't lose sight of that. So Doug created UFOTOG, which was basically a rolling UFO detection system. It would open the top roof of a Humvee would open up, and on a hydraulic lift, you'd see these large telescopes and sensors rise out and be able to simultaneously, that's the key word, simultaneously acquire data from a single sighting. So you have corroborating evidence. Now, it turns out that UFOTOG system, it was hard for that to gain traction because it was one unit, one system. And it needed more refinements, and there was more to come. So as time went on, and enter my involvement, I wrote Doug about UFOs. I told him I was really fascinated with the UFOTOG system, and I said, boy, we can, we should make dozens of these things. And together, we talked about the fact that we could make many of these systems, but smaller. We could make them maybe the size of a dinner plate and have multiple sensors. And what I did was I put together a team of top scientists from around the country that I know, and I got everybody involved. They're doing specific different things. We have people going to work on cameras, people that are working on things like gamma ray detectors, and building other electronics for detecting different types of radiation other than gamma rays. And we have night vision systems, UV, infrared systems, all those cameras. And there's some of the big companies that make these cameras have expressed an interest in actually talking to us about possibly partnering with us technology-wise to let us look at some of their cameras to include on these systems. The point is, once deployed, these units will be able to talk to each other, talk to us, and be able to relay within seconds of the event an actual UFO sighting with corroborating data across an entire gamut of instrumentation per instrument palette that we put out there. It's really kind of the ultimate Skywatch system, Alejandro, because it's also, because they're going to be set up in a triangular system with 10-mile legs. If this one sees it, unit A in the triad, if it'll tell B, hey, go look over here. And if B sees it, now you have triangulation available between this baseline of 10 miles. So what we can do from that is we can identify every single man-made satellite within a second or two and know it's a satellite and then exclude it because we know it's just man-made. We don't have to worry about it. So we're looking into and have at least one transponder decoder for the prototype where we're actually going to be able to listen to aircraft and know whether they're civilian aircraft, military aircraft, know that they're aircraft. So if we just see strange lights, but we're getting a transponder code from it, we can at least for the initial first pass ignore it as a UFO and pass it through as data to be analyzed in some other fashion. You see what I mean?
Now, he's released like a small 5-minute kind of trailer teaser for some of this where you get to see like the Humvee and the equipment coming out and some pretty amazing stuff. Like he uses night vision to zoom in on an airplane at night and you can see this airplane. I mean, he's got some pretty impressive equipment. And so he's at least related to that. Maybe you can explain a little more because there is a lot of people curious about this. The movie, he came out with a really, you can talk about the technology he used to film it, but he's come up with a 10-minute movie that's kind of about someone using these sort of cameras to get UFO photos. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a short 10-minute movie that is actually sort of a cinematic experiment, if you will, and it is called UFOTOG. And without giving too much of the plot away, it is about a man who is using technology to try and communicate with alien races. And the success or failure, of course, remains to be seen when it comes out. But I can tell you this, having worked on it for the last, I don't know, I guess it's been 9 months now with Doug, it's been an interesting progression as we move from milestone A to milestone B. Everything you do at point B makes you rethink what you did at A. And so we'd actually go back and redo a few things and change a few things and then move forward again. So it's sort of like a iterative process where you take a step forward and half a step back, a step forward and a quarter step back, and you keep doing that, and then but you make these leaps forward every now and then. So the point is that there's a lot of things here that were going on at once. If I can talk about the technology just a little bit. I mentioned it's a cinematic experiment, and it really is because here, when you go to a regular movie, you're watching a movie in like 30 frames per second. You're not seeing a movie at high frame rate. Now, what does frame rate have to do with anything? Well, if you went to, was it one of the latest Hobbit movies? It was done in 48 frames per second, right? It was a different experience because there were more frames per second going by the eye. What's that do to you? Okay, now those are getting split, right? You see them all in your eyes, but in 3D, okay, if you do, say, 120 frames per second, and you get 60 frames in each eye with the 3D glasses, a lot of things happen that are different from a standard 3D movie. And this is a 3D movie, by the way. That's what it's meant to be. And it's also meant to be shown on a big screen with a very, very bright projector. And it's targeting what's called a 4K, projection system, which is extremely bright. Obviously double the 2K. And what's happening is when you look at 120 frames per second, your immersion factor goes up immeasurably. And suddenly you feel like you're looking through a window. Now, you can see this very quickly when you go to any standard movie theater. How many people are in the front row?
As few as possible.
Right, exactly so. And the reason is because when you have that big car chase in the front row, the car going from left to right across the screen is what? A blur. You can't see it. If you stopped and froze the video, the film at each point, you'd see that car is just a blurry smear, correct? And that's just because, it's 30 frames per second. But if you look at 120 frames per second, it's much more clear. And that motion actually immerses you more because now you feel like you're looking at reality. You're looking through a window. That's something that is what Doug is targeting with the technology. And so far, in looking at the footage so far, seeing it on the big screen, we have Doug's studio is a full-blown skunkworks. We have everything there. And, we have this massive screen up there, and we can just put anything we want up there. We can go watch an existing 3D movie, a regular 2D movie, or our own movie. And looking at those on that screen, you see things very differently. And so that's what we're targeting. And what he's targeting is trying to get that reality, that punch, which is missing right now.
That's sweet. Now, are there many theaters that have a 4K projector that can display this? Are people going to be able to check that out?
Well, that's the thing. Okay, the thing is that unfortunately, not a lot of theaters do have that. So obviously, the target venues right now are going to be a smaller choice initially, but the movie can also be downsampled for 2D without any problem. And it's just as startling, because of of course, there's Doug for one thing, and to watch him direct and to watch him do the camera work and production. You actually realize you really are in the presence of someone that, rolls over and wakes up in the morning thinking this way, because he's different. He actually sees things in a different way. So the 2D movie is stunning, visually stunning. Everything from the camera angle to the lighting to the scripting and the way the actor is delivering the lines. Everything is a little bit different than I've been used to seeing. So it's been a very fulfilling experience. So
pretty cool.
It will be able to be seen in every single theater, downsampled as 2D, and in some select theaters at the full 3D with the full 120 frames.
Sweet.
But it's amazing. It's in heavy post production right now. Everything is being put together. There's a little bit more work to do, but it's really meant to be a visual foray into the potential of what could be reality with UFOTOG. The UFOTOG we're talking about. Right.
And just so people have a background on what your relationship to all this is that not only are you the photo analyst for the Mutual UFO Network, but you also, in your business, work on highly detailed models anywhere from the movie industries to the military, working on prototypes and stuff, right?
Yeah, and my work with MUFON, and this is something that really shows my age, Alejandro. I've been in MUFON since 1971.
Holy, that's before I was born.
I know.
And I've got more white hair than you.
Well, that's a genetic thing. It means nothing. Doesn't mean you're old. Right. I knew a 20-year-old with a full head of white hair, by the way.
Oh, my gosh.
Dutch, yeah. So anyway, so my business makes models and prototypes, both digital models and animation, as well as physical models. And so we've been doing that since 1995 is when I started the business. And we started because we actually got a BBC documentary job where we actually had to go create submarines that worked underwater. And we went to London and filmed 7-day miniseries over there. And that was the start. And from that point forward, I kept, going up a little notch, a little notch, a little notch. And that led to military work. And now, that led to, from 3 pictures on my webpage suddenly it went to people saying, I just spent 2 hours on your webpage. Those pictures are unbelievable. It's like, wow, I don't even spend 2 hours on my webpage. I got to spend time just maintaining my webpage. I haven't done that.
That's
so there's a
pretty
lot.
sweet. Now,
Yeah.
people are wondering about the future project, because a lot of people are waiting for this breakthrough movie that's in the works. And I know Doug Trumbull has mentioned it's going to be an epic that takes place in the future. Does it have anything to do with UFOTOG, or is this totally separate?
No, actually, they are similar. They're related, and that's as much as you know, as Doug wants released at this moment. You know, but they are definitely related. And when you see, this is one of several projects though we have in the in the queue up there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not in his studio right now, although I talked to him earlier today. But you know, you're looking at my spot here. But there's a number of projects in the queue up there, and this 10-minute short is meant to open up wider to a larger feature.
Cool. And then when do you, oh, I should mention too, you provided a really cool photo of a model that's going to be in the 10-minute movie?
Yeah, yeah. It's the model I sent you, the photo is a device that the main character uses in the movie. Because the other thing, again, you know, and by the way, that model, it's weird how things happen. I was up there with my first blush attempt at what I thought Doug was talking about, and we communicate very well because we have sort of the same thinking in a way when it comes to what we want to see visually, because he's very good at it, and of course I'm way down here, he's way up here, and he's the master. But honestly, it's great to be able to talk because we have this one relationship with UFOs where we actually meet right dead center in the same place, and so that helps us to communicate. And he asked me to create this device that this lead character was going to use, and I went back and I created one, and I brought it up to show him, and he was like, well, it needs a little more of this, a little more of that, what do you think? And I was like, well, we can do this, we can do that. So it was 3:30 in the afternoon, and I drove the 39 minutes back here to my shop, and I started working on this thing at around 4:30 and in the afternoon, and I worked on it until I was finished, and I didn't finish until 9:30 the following morning, and I didn't even notice I had worked all night long. I was having such a good time making that thing in the picture I showed you, and it's actually, what you can't see in that picture is it's actually plumbed for liquid nitrogen. I added a whole copper plenum in there that I created so that we could actually pump liquid nitrogen into it. And so selected orifices would spew this beautiful liquid nitrogen, cloud whooshing out. And in the 10-minute movie, you actually see that. It's very prominent. But
cool.
And amongst all the other things, while I'm working on that, I get a call saying, hey, we need this special thing you can press to make the thing go off. A little detonator. Ooh, yeah, let's do that. So I had to whip something like that out too. But that entire thing was just one day's work. Even though there's some big copper balls on it, and those things I found at a local factory that makes them about 10 miles from here. And they don't sell to the public typically, but I just called the guy and said, can I? And he said, well, come on down. And so I got a tour of the factory and came back with everything I needed. It was really cool.
Sweet.
Yeah,
pretty exciting. So when do you think then UFOTOG, the actual camera system, will be rolled out, where people will start to place these little remote devices?
Well, that's a good question, and it relates more to what's the schedule of the science team, because these are very busy guys. Now, I was supposed to come out there to Arizona in June. I'm in Connecticut, and it is June now, and I'm not going to make it. So it looks like it's probably going to be maybe the second week in July when I come out and meet with the science team, and we're going to actually come up with the final platform instrumentation that we want. We all have ideas, but see, one of the systems we have to build is a radiation detector that unfortunately is extremely expensive. But if UFOs fly the way we think they do, which uses string theory principles, right? And if you talk to Michio Kaku, you know that string theory is the only game in town. That's what he says, and I agree with him. He's absolutely right, because I'm an astronomer. That's what I went to school for. So I think that he's right on that too. And I believe that if they do, they give off a particular kind of radiation that would literally be the smoking gun. And so we have to have detectors on every single one of these pallets that we deploy. Now, as far as when they're going to be ready, once we get that determined, then we have some potential funding sitting in the wings for us that we're going to look at, and we're going to build one singular prototype of the smaller unit, and we're going to deploy it, and we're going to put it through trials, and we're going to make sure that it can detect, like, in the millisecond intervals that we think it can. That means, for instance, that if a meteor comes in, okay, the way it works is there's a fisheye camera that looks through the whole sky. We call it the all-sky camera, as you can imagine. And the all-sky camera sees an event happening in the sky. And it's like a dispatcher. It says, okay, quick, look there. And it tells the rest of the instrument palette, go look there and start getting data. At the same time, it's telling any other units in the triad, go look there, and see if you can see it. So if they haven't already. And what they do is, that whole system has to be tested, and we have to make sure that we're getting all the proper responses. And if it works as fast as we think it can, we can detect meteors. And now, if you've seen a meteor, you say, "Oh, what was that?"
Cool.
And it's gone, right? Because it happens in a fifth of a second. Well, chances are we should be able to detect and get data from an incoming meteor if the system can respond as fast as we think it can.
Cool.
So that's going to take some time to do some troubleshooting. I don't know exactly how long, but I think it's going to have to be several months anyway before we start to deploy these en masse.
Cool.
Now, we designed a land unit, and I also designed a sea unit because I believe in hunting for unknown submerged objects as well. So we want to also get the one put in the oceans. Well, we have several that go in the ocean, and we have the same kind of setup as on the land. But the USO hunting device, we call the SDU, the Sea Deployment Unit. Okay, big words. But the LDU, Land Deployment Unit, is one thing. The Sea Deployment Unit is a totally different unit. Okay, I designed a system on that where it's going to be 25 to 30 feet down in the water at all times. Cool. And as it bobs up and down on a tether to the surface where its antenna is, as it bobs up and down, the antenna is going to spool up, and then the weight of the unit's going to let it come down. But as it comes down, it's actually going to roll a charger and charge the battery. So we're going to use wave action to keep charging the systems on board.
And where do you think these remote devices will be deployed? What's the plan for that?
We've already talked to a number of folks, including some members of the tribal nations, and we've got tentative permission to deploy on tribal lands. We have tentative, and that's very tentative because we still need to meet with the elders and so forth, but we have an initial opening to actually talk to tribal leaders on that. My mother's Native American, so I'm very sensitive to cultural needs of the Native Americans. So when we go forward here, we're going to be deploying in the Southwest for sure. We are going to be deploying in at least one place in the Bahamas for the sea deployment units, and off the California coast, we're going to be deploying in the Santa Catalina Channel. And we think that is an area that, if you recall, in the mid-'90s, there was actually quite a UFO sightings of USOs that became UFOs, in that area. Coincidentally, in 1994, I think just before the West Coast flap of all these, I was on a U.S. submarine at sea as a guest, and that's where I saw a fast mover.
Wow.
In the sonar room. I actually saw this thing go by. When I asked the executive officer what it was, he asked me if I was having a good time on the boat, and I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Let's keep it that way."
In other words,
be quiet. Yeah, but they're doing what they've been told to do, and that's what's important to understand. There is a program that tracks these. Anybody that sees something odd like that at sea, they report it and do what the XO said: log it and dog it. Basically log it and then bury it. So you get some interesting.
And I guess one last question, just to plug it, because I think it really interesting theories in it, and it sounds like this string theory radiation you're referring to is also something talked about in that book UFO Enigma by Mr. Schwartz.
Bob Schroeder.
Bob Schroeder. Yeah, so is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely, and Bob and I are friends. I talked to him just the other day, and I sat with Bob for a while, and we talked about the whole string theory approach. Bob's a very intelligent guy, and I think he's got it. I think he's got it on the money.
Cool.
And by the way, the New England UFO Conference in October, which happens in Leominster, Massachusetts, which is pronounced Leominster, but spelled Leominster. Okay, I'm going to be speaking there, but I'm also going to, Bob is also going to be there talking.
Okay.
So he's actually going to give his string theory talk as well, which is great because this will give us time to talk about it. But yeah, and there's certain key particles that if UFOs are transiting out of our X, Y, Z through time, what's called a membrane, right? I mean, everything we know is in dimensions of X, Y, and Z, all moving through time. Everything's moving. So that's all we know about our universe, and that actually constitutes only 4% of the entire universe. So the other 96%, we're looking at dark energy and of course dark matter. And the dark energy world is where we probably will discover a lot of the interactions and particles that are going to help us do things like travel at speeds that don't require a limit like light speed. We get off of our XYZ universe, so to speak, and be able to get out into a middle area called the bulk, B-U-L-K. Again, going to string theory, in that bulk area, you're no longer constrained by the dimensional requirements and structures of our universe and our space-time. This sounds like sci-fi, but it's not. Okay, this is real stuff. This is real physics. So that's what's nice about this. And it really does lead us to a place where we could literally, and I know, again, this sounds like science fiction, but we actually see the feasibility long distance from here. We see the feasibility of actually being able to punch out of our universe and pop in anywhere else within a matter of just a couple minutes. Now, as weird as that sounds, the structures of the universe make that available to us, through string theory. So, there are a lot of possibilities here, and I know I'm glossing over a lot of this because.
Well, I'm thinking that'll help me in my commute, cut down I have a long commute, that'll help out.
Yeah, actually, I think you'd be best served with an Alcubierre drive rather than a string theory.
I'll take two.
Okay. Yeah, right. Exactly so.
All right, cool, man. Thank you so much for giving us the updates.
Sure,
Exciting
it's great
stuff.
to hang with you for a few minutes.
All right, cool. And tell Doug that at Open Minds we give him the 2 thumbs up.
Fantastic. I'll tell him. And
you too.
Well, thank you so much. And Doug said he's also willing to come back and talk to you guys. He just needs to get this. This has to get out of the way. We're talking. If you want to look at him, 2 months from now, I'm sure that he'll be very happy to join you.
We'll certainly do so because we'll be very happy to talk to him. Thanks, man.
Oh yeah. Okay. Talk to you guys soon.
Trumbull's UFOTOG movie is set to be released in August. As Mark mentioned, only a limited number of theaters will be able to show the video, but we'll keep you up to date on the details once the movie's released. So check openminds.tv for updates.